Thank you for joining me as we continue our series on restoration. Last time we talked about how restoration is messy and that the first step to true restoration, whether it's restoring our homes or restoring our hearts, is exposing what is broken and decayed beneath the surface. I hope you've had the opportunity to take time to dig deep and ask God to help you identify those things that are broken in your life. Once we have identified them, we cannot ignore them any longer. They have to be dealt with. So this week we're going to talk about the 4 ways that God may choose to help us deal with those broken areas of our lives. The first one is remove. So a couple months back, we were working in the crawl space of our home, and every time the wind switched directions, we were overcome by this vile stench. It took a few days to identify, but my dad, who was here visiting, discovered what appeared to be a decomposing bobcat under our home. Well, there is no question with how you deal with something like that. It has to be immediately removed and disposed of. Perhaps your brokenness comes in the form of addiction or a compulsive habit or an abusive, toxic, or inappropriate relationship. Well, there is no question about how God wants to deal with that thing in your life. It has to be removed immediately. You would think I was absolutely crazy if I told you that we kept digging that bobcat back up just to check on it, just because we couldn't let it go. But that is exactly what people do with those destructive behaviors, isn't it? They just keep going back. One more time for old time's sake. Proverbs 26:11 says it like this: as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats its folly. I have to tell you that you will never experience the freedom of restoration until that thing is permanently and completely eradicated from your life. Well, the second way that God may choose to help us deal with our brokenness is repair. So one of the first things we had to do in our home was to take care of the broken toilet. Now, we couldn't just remove that thing. We kind of need it, right? And so we replaced it with a new one. Well, maybe God has been telling you to lay down your career, a relationship, or your church home. It's been broken and hasn't been working for you for a while. But you're saying, God, I really need that. Well, don't worry. He knows exactly what you need, and He promises to supply your every need. But He wants to exchange that thing because He has something better for you. Isaiah 61 says that He will give you beauty for ashes, and that's just what He wants to do. He wants to trade your mess and give you a masterpiece. Well, the third way that God may choose to help us deal with our brokenness is to repair. So one thing that we knew for sure was going to need fixed in our home was the plumbing. Due to exposure to the elements, there were some things broken there. So we were really pleased when we found that we did not have to completely gut the system and start from scratch. There were just a few broken pipes that were in need of repair. So maybe your relationship is broken and you have given up hope. Or maybe that ministry that you felt you knew you were called to is falling apart. Well, to that thing, God may be telling you, don't give up, don't throw it out. I want to help you fix it. 2 Kings 12:5 says, they shall repair the damages of the house wherever any damage may be found. So God may be wanting to repair that broken thing in your life. The fourth way that God may choose to help us with our brokenness is to renew. Sometimes things really aren't broken at all. They've just been neglected and weathered and lost their luster. Well, the exterior of our cabin had become weathered, and so it just required some light sanding and weather sealant, and it was returned to its former glory. It was renewed. Well, maybe you've lost your luster. I have to be transparent and tell you that this year that happened to me a little bit. I started to feel my joy and my peace slip away. But as I have cried out to God and asked Him to restore to me the joy of my salvation, He is doing that work in me faithfully, and He is restoring and renewing me. And I promise you, He will do that same thing for you if you cry out to Him and ask Him to. Maybe it's not your joy or your peace. Maybe it's your calling or your gifting that you have just neglected. You've left it on the shelf and allowed it to collect dust. 2 Timothy 1:6 says, I remind you to kindle afresh the gift of God, which is in you. Well, let's do that. God is calling us to rekindle and renew that thing that he has planted within you, and he wants you to be refreshed and restored. So I pray that you work again this week to ask God to show you what are the areas of your life that he wants to remove, replace, repair, or restore. Join us next time as we continue this series.